It has been 42 years since a monster walked into a tavern down in SeaTac, the Barn Door Tavern, and committed a triple murder. And now that monster may be getting out of prison. It's an unbelievable story. Kelley Tarp, her father, was murdered that night when she was 13 years old, and she joins us here on the Dori Monson Show. Kelley, I always appreciate talking to you, but I'm so sorry that your family continues to go through this insanity.
Thank you, Dori, for having me on your show once again. So are we. We got the decision from the Indeterminate Sentencing Review Board, and via email, and we were completely devastated. And the board would not even meet with us to explain their decision. And
let's tell everybody about Timothy Pauley and what he did that night in case they have not heard us talk about this. And I know it's really painful stuff, but he and another guy went into the tavern after closing. They knocked on the door. They came in, and then they tortured two women. Your mother was one of the women tortured, although she survived, right?
Correct.
And how did your mother survive the torture and triple murder?
She was hung along with Sherry from the bathroom stalls with the cords wrapped around her neck. And when they passed out, the cords loosened up enough to where she was able to untie herself. Both her and Sherry were naked, tied back to back with the cords wrapped around their necks in the bathroom stall. And she survived barely.
Right.
Yeah, and then she crawled from the bathroom, tried to find some clothes or something, and she found my dad and Robert and Linda.
And they'd been executed, just shot in the head, right?
Correct. Timothy Pauley could have walked out that tavern that night, and he didn't. He chose not to help my mom. Linda or Sherry, when he saw the condition that they were in, and he knows what happened to Linda, he opened up the cooler door and executed my father and Robert point blank. They were tied in the cooler. They posed him no harm, and he executed them.
Yes. The only reason I want to mention just the severity of what they did is because this is the actions of an animal. So we were told that at the time, the death penalty had been ruled unconstitutional. Otherwise, they would have sought the death penalty for Timothy Pauley. But a court ruled it was unconstitutional for that time here in our state. So we were told that, we don't have the death penalty, but we have life without the possibility of parole, and these monsters will never get out of prison. How do we go from there to where this guy is on the brink of being released back into at a relatively young age? I mean, the guy's only in his early 60s. So how did we go from life without the possibility of parole to this guy being released?
Dori, that's a good question. He should have been still in prison. There were some changes that were made to the sentencing review and the board and the sentencing act where it allowed people to be eligible for parole. But this board has erred on so many times. In 1990, this board was supposed to align the sentencing to where it made it to where if he committed the same crime today, the sentencing would be the same, which means he would have had 3 consecutive life terms. But they didn't do that. They've erred in so many times, as well as him filing appeal after appeal and hounding this board to review his sentence and reduce it without our knowledge and without just cause. And that's why we're in this situation that we're in. He should not be released.
Timothy Pauley has also been described by some as not a reformed man, but a master manipulator who even charmed one of the head of the review board, the parole review board, several years ago. I mean, it seemed like she found him to be a charming guy, and that just doesn't square with the monster that you've just described and what he did to your parents.
He is Dave Reichert, Congressman Reichert, described him similar to personality as Ted Bundy and Gary Ridgway. There's something that's off on people like that, and Timothy Pauley is one of those. He's not rehabilitated. He's only learned how to master and manipulate the system and con those people who he needs to con to make the right reports for him. You are aware of the letter that he wrote to his brother.
Yes.
That showed his true thoughts and how he wants to act revenge and harm other people and DOC workers. The board is aware of that, and they neglected to act on it.
You and I talked right before the parole board issued its ruling, and we encouraged my listeners to contact the parole board and to let them know that they did not think this killer should get out of prison. What was your reaction, Kelley, when they told you that they had determined that he was a changed man and should be let free? As I say, he's just a couple years older than me, and I still feel like a young guy. I mean, at a relatively young age, that he would be let free. What was your reaction?
Dori, we were devastated. They didn't even tell us. We received an email, and there's a victims liaison that we met via Zoom, and she told us that whenever we questioned in terms of why, how did they come up with this decision? How is this possible? All we were told is the decision is there, that he's met the requirements and checking off a box in a class, but that's not true rehabilitation. That doesn't change the mindset and the person that he is and what he's capable of. We are fearful. When he walked out that night, we would have been orphans had my mom not survived.
I just can't imagine at age 13 to lose your father. I'm the father of 3 girls, and it just absolutely breaks my heart what you've gone through. And I just find it disgusting. There's no other word, that the state of Washington and that the prison parole board is making you relive all of this as often as you've had to, because we've talked about this with you over the years now, and I just can't believe they continually put your family through this. Let me ask you, Kelley, I hear, the emotion in your voice. Is this anger that I'm hearing? Is it fear? I mean, do you believe that Timothy Pauley is capable of hurting your family?
Dori, it's a combination of fear and anger, frustration, disappointment, re-victimization. I look at my mom, and she did everything she was supposed to. The detectives at night did everything they were supposed to. The only reason he's getting out is because Timothy Pauley is a master of manipulation, and he's figured out the system. And we victims are continuing to be re-victimized over and over again. He plays the victim, and he's not. He is a murderer. He's a mass murderer and belongs behind prison. He walked out that night, and he would have left there would have been 5 people dead that night. We're not asking for the death sentence. We're only asking Governor Inslee to step in and make him pay for what he did. We need justice for our dad, for Robert. Robert's mom is 88 years old, and she's still fighting for her son. We need your audience to call Governor Inslee and urge him to do the right thing. He has the power to do it.
Yes, and I want to just restate what you just said, that the last hope now to keep a mass murderer locked up is Jay Inslee, who does have broad discretionary power as governor, and he could overrule the parole board and say that this guy should remain in prison. So that is now your only hope to keep Timothy Pauley locked up, right?
Correct. And Governor Inslee and this board needs to start thinking about victims and our rights and our safety as the Washington state citizens. Our concern for safety and our rights need to have more value and more merit when this board is making their decisions. And we need to make changes in the law. But right now, we just need to make sure that Pauley doesn't get out. And I'm imploring, I'm asking everybody who's listening, who knew my father, who went to the Barn Door Tavern and knew what a great family restaurant tavern that was, and the amazing Oy family who ran that, to give justice for us.
Yes.
and implored Governor Inslee to step in. And if you can't get through the first time, please call again. Send an email.
Absolutely.
Call his executive assistant. We need to let him know that we want to stand together and make some changes for our state. Sorry, we can start with this one.
Yep. It's insanity that they're on the brink of releasing a mass murder. Jay Inslee, most politicians in our region have decided that they care far more about criminals than they do victims. And now we're going to see if Jay Inslee will take a stand for the victims against a mass murder. That's not asking too much. Kelley, I will continue to remind people to contact Governor Inslee about Timothy Pauley, who needs to remain locked up. And I'm so sorry for what your family continues to go through with this outrageous story.
Thank you. So do we. It's enough. We've been fighting for way too long, and we deserve justice and peace.
Agreed. All right, Kelley. We'll stay in touch, okay?
Thank you.
All right, contact Jay Inslee's office. Let him know that you, as a citizen of this state, believe mass murderer Timothy Pauley should remain behind bars for the triple murder and then the torturing, possible rapes, everything that went down that night 42 years ago. All right, love to hear your thoughts about all this. You can text me at 888-973-KIRO, and we have lots more to come here on the Dori Monson Show.